Hello and welcome to the Wire Talks. I'm Siddharth Bhatia. Till not so long ago, there was a stigma attached about going to a professional mental health counselor. At the very least, it was seen as a sign of emotional and perhaps mental weakness. That has changed and very rapidly so, especially among young Indians. Post COVID, more and more Indians are seeking out therapy, and what is more, have no compunctions about admitting it. Many of them may also have the support of their parents, though, in general, and our guest can look at that, in general, our older generations still may have some inhibitions about it. This is a major shift, and to understand it, I invited Myra Desai, clinical psychologist at Jaslok Hospital in Mumbai. She is the co author of The Coronavirus: What You Need to Know About the Global Pandemic. Myra has had extensive psychological training, and at her hospital, she provides assessment and counseling services. And she has seen many of these changes in society firsthand. Myra Desai, welcome to the Wire Talks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatia. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I go strictly by anecdotal evidence, but as a professional, would you say there has been a rise in Indians seeking professional therapy?
Absolutely. We notice that there is a trend that has been over the past decade gradually increasing, and more so with COVID coming in and mental health awareness also increasing, that it has even further accelerated the growth of the number of people who are better aware of their mental health and are willing to seek help in case they need it.
You mentioned COVID. Why do you think it has happened? Can you give us a kind of from your point of view, what you've noticed? But why do you think this has happened?
So I'll first elaborate in terms of why it has happened in general. Has been a lot of effort from multiple NGOs, from world organizations towards destigmatizing mental health. Fortunately, people are recognizing it, mental health, to be as important as physical health, and the awareness has been growing. What added as a catalyst to the situation was when COVID occurred and everybody's life together collectively went through a major shift, okay, where we were put under restrictions, multiple people lost their jobs, we were homebound, there was a fear of the illness coming in. Everybody faced circumstances and crisis in a way that they had not before. And that's not to say that that have impaired everybody's mental health adversely. There were people who coped and grew even more resilient as a result of that. But multiple people faced situations that made them feel stuck. And adding to the lockdown restrictions where people were isolated, they also were taken away from their support systems where they could typically share the concerns that were happening. Lots of information, fake news, all of that culminated to an increase in stress, an increase in depression, and an increase in anxiety levels. In fact, the WHO reports that almost there was a 25% increase in stress, depression, and anxiety during the first year following COVID, where the restrictions and lockdowns were in place worldwide. When multiple people go through such an experience, they become better aware that mental health is important, and then they become more willing to seek help for it. And I feel like that in a big way led to a boost in access and awareness for mental health services.
But there must have been some people who actually, of course, it must have increased awareness of mental health, but there must have been, would have been, I think, many people who felt something had gone wrong at the end of that entire exercise, at the end of that entire period. First, COVID phase one, then COVID phase two, and yet did not know how to put a, how to put a finger on it. How did
Absolutely.
they? How did they understand that there were solutions or help available? How did they understand that?
I think I'm not sure if everybody did. I think that's still something that is happening. There is still a long way to go. So the fact that there has been a lot more recognition and awareness is true, and we are grateful that that's the situation. However, there's still many more who are waiting to be on that path. So often, what tends to happen is I am going through so much distress that I am willing to seek absolutely anywhere and everywhere where there can be help. Fortunately, COVID forced a lot of us, including mental health professionals, to be able to move online and offer digital services, tele services, which also then improves access. And people can, during COVID, I remember I found people from remote corners of the country, places I wasn't even aware of, on the map, from a small village in Calcutta reaching out saying, what, I'm not doing well. And I found your number through some social media, through, the hospital. And is it possible for us to seek help? So the awareness began to grow and the access became easier. For a lot of people, they don't want to walk into a clinic saying, what, I don't want others to see me in my locality that I'm walking into a mental health clinic, or I'm walking in to see a professional for, in their ways it would be, for my weakness or my mental problem. So then online services also offer a degree of anonymity. You can be within the comfort of your home and still access services. So that's where we started seeing the transition. Though there are still people who struggle to recognize it in themselves, but usually, with fortunately with our Indian family systems, and we live in a collectivistic society, if they do not know where to go, there are people around them who may notice. And because the general awareness has increased, they offer, or very often we find someone else bringing them in for help.
You spoke of isolation, one of the words you used about during the COVID period. Two other factors I want
Mhm.
to bring up. One is the isolation of the fact that you may have moved cities and left your parental home to work in a second city. And so, therefore, a sense of isolation because it takes a long time to make friends,
Mhm.
and it takes a long time to even adjust to the pace of this new home of yours, new job, new flat, perhaps sharing. So that's isolation of one kind. And the second is social media engendered uh, isolation, where you say, look at it, everyone seems to have a better life than I do, for example, on Instagram. Or, everyone's discussing this and I'm not at all part of it. At least at home, I was with my college friends and we sat and chatted. Just general examples I'm giving. So, are these factors have also contributed to us? COVID apart, have they contributed to a sense of isolation? Because that's a big factor.
Yes, absolutely. How often do we go now to a restaurant and see a group of young kids who are more spending more time on their phone than they are chatting with each other? So, with the internet coming in and that access increasing drastically, people are more, and let's remind ourselves, all these apps are created in a way to increase the user engagement. So, they're designed to get you hooked on to them. And with that, the kids today are so used to being on social media that they feel they struggle to have conversations, communication, and that further increases the loneliness or the feeling of isolation. An other aspect that happened with COVID was, yes, one was if someone has moved cities, but and that is a challenge. But for every person who's living where they always have lived, now suddenly I can't go into school. Suddenly, that side chat I would have with my friend when the class is going on can't be had because the lectures or the classes are online. So I am cutting out actively. My friends, I can't go and stay, and we can't spend time with each other's house because somebody has an older grandparent who, the family is worried will contract an illness, or someone in
Hey,
my.
but wait a minute, just to interrupt you here.
Sure.
These examples point towards somebody who's 18, 19, 20. So,
Yes.
as young as that, is it?
As young as that, we saw that. So a lot of people, after the restrictions lifted, we found coming in struggling to go back to school and feeling quite anxious in the initial phase to reintegrate back into that social setup, especially during, the early teens phase, because what would have been a natural part of development, where you go, you interact, with same aged peers, typically initially of the same gender, you start exploring, all that communication had come to a halt. And one of the ways that it was instilled was, of course, the fear of the illness spreading. So for reintegration back in became quite a difficult thing. So, and how do people spend their time, especially for the first few months before schools figured we can move online, before work arrangements for a lot of adults moved to work from home situations, is people consumed a lot of media, people felt more isolated, and those communications got disrupted. So, when they had to go back, it was a struggle.
You mentioned somebody from a small place outside Calcutta, for example, getting in touch with you after finding a number somewhere or the other, which can only mean one thing: they were seeking out something. But is there, in your experience, because I believe, at least my experience shows that you are a very busy person. Uh, so, uh, so you clearly have a lot of patience, if that's the correct word. But in general, what you have seen, is there a demographic profile of the kind of person who's been looking for therapy, a particular type, young urban professional, for example, or young non urban, or older senior citizens? You mentioned maybe high school kids or early college kids. Is there a general profile you would be able to put together, or it's all kinds?
Maybe slightly nuanced. So, pardon me for the length of this answer that it's going to be. In general, I would say there has been an increase across all demographics. But if I had to look at it in a more nuanced fashion, what we find as a trend is when you're looking at, you know, people who are senior citizens are often brought in by the younger kids who have more awareness, urging them to seek help when they notice a concern. That's usually far more severe into the stress levels. So you're seeing them being far more adversely affected by the mental health, and that's when they're willing to seek help. With the younger population, especially teens, early 20s, early 30s, we see them now proactively seeking help. They have recognized the importance of mental health, and they want to see what they can do in the early phases itself to cope better, hopefully, so that they may not need medication. They can help themselves. A lot of them come in saying, broadly, everything's okay, just a few issues here and there, but I want to work towards wellness. I recognize that, my anger can be a problem and it's possibly getting me into trouble. And can you help me work on that? So that's quite a positive shift that we have been seeing, where people now want to move from illness, or taking care and curing illness, towards wellness and what we can do towards achieving that transition shift. We see a lot more openness and seeking behavior amongst teens, young adults, young professionals as well. And with the older generation, the willingness to seek help, with the stigma dropping, is higher.
So it's intriguing and interesting, you should say, that the senior citizens are brought by the younger members of the family, because clearly it's the whole thing is upside down, because otherwise the child used to be dragged by their parents to whatever. So that's interesting. So therefore, if I may draw a conclusion from this, is that
Mm.
there is a uh, positive aspect to this idea that, uh, yes, I need help, and yes, it is available, and yes, I should be open about it. So isn't that's a positive, would you say?
Absolutely. And there is nothing to hide about it. So the other interesting shift that we see is now, earlier it would be a profession where typically one mental health professional is referring to another mental health professional. Okay, so between school counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, we're all referring within, because we have to sometimes convince people that they may need support beyond the services that we could provide, uh, and get that in. But now we find that a lot of the people who come in come referred by friends, referred by family, saying, you know what, we had a great experience. We felt like we got much better. So people are more open to talking about seeking mental health, which means the stigma is dropping. And they are the ones who are encouraging and advocating, saying, why don't you go seek help? In fact, I sometimes with the younger crowd, and this I know not so much from my professional experience, but when I talk to family and friends as well, where there's almost a trend saying, I have my therapist, and do you have yours? And if not, maybe you should go and see one, and that's what's going to help. More so, of course, this is amongst the urban crowd.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, are they generally coming for counseling generally to seek solutions or just to talk, or looking for ways to, as you said, improve mental health and addressing it before it gets um, wellness, before it gets more serious? Or surely there must be people who must be coming because they just find they have no one to turn to.
That is true. All
Uh,
reasons that you mentioned are true. And the last one, um, unfortunately, has been becoming even more so prevalent for the younger generation, because their friendships, their relationships, are not as strong anymore, because either they are so overloaded with school and those responsibilities, or extracurriculars and those focus, that play time which we used to have, where you do nothing and just spend time with friends, and parents don't know if you've gone down in the society for a couple of hours before you're back, that has minimized in a large way. So
yes.
the trust factor on being able to share comfortably with close friends has become and is becoming an increasing challenge now. So people are not as comfortable sharing. So sometimes, and some of the home situations are so adverse that they would not want to share it with friends because they don't want the judgment. So they come in seeking a safe space, judgment free space, where they can share and voice their concerns. With as a psychologist, we are completely disconnected broadly from the rest of their everyday life. So they feel like I can come and I can talk and I can get this very unbiased perspective, which is hopefully not preachy.
Yeah,
you know
that's a typical thing because that's the one thing that they don't want. But what about young professionals? People, let's say 25, 28, thereabouts. Are they also seeking out the same things? Because at work,
Mhm.
uh, now, assuming even if you live with your parents, but assuming you are not, which is more and more happening, uh, that 28-year-old uh,
Yes.
woman, man, whatever, is finding it difficult to talk to anybody in the office, has a terrible boss,
Mm.
colleagues who take all the credit, just again,
Yeah.
just painting a broad brush picture, or career is doing well, but there is a sense of emptiness or something. Who do I turn to talk? Are they because we've been discussing school and college students. What about these?
It's
What about this demographic?
very similar challenges with a lot more responsibilities now, right? So at work, like you mentioned, so many high pressure situations. Usually, because the focus has been initially to focus on work and getting your career set, relationships have also become extremely complicated with this hybrid online and in person. To meet someone organically versus these dating websites seem to be their own difficult challenge to navigate. So, or do we want to go the arranged marriage route, and family pressures for committing? So, finding a stable partner, not having enough, being so busy with work. The work situation over the past 5 years has just shown us how dynamic it has been. People are. It's difficult to find jobs. It's difficult. It's sometimes unexpectedly you're losing jobs. You start realizing that all the training you've had so far is probably not going to be sufficient to keep you ongoing on your work. Like for a lot of IT professionals now, they're trying to refigure how they're going to do it, what they're going to move on to next, what additional supplementary training they need to do. There are financial goals, people want to move out. With all of these pressures, sometimes it feels very isolating, and they have nowhere to turn to, they have no one to talk to. And in these moments also they are seeking help on how to cope. A lot of them sometimes feel very anxious about their situations, and hopefully if we can catch them before it becomes a clinical condition, then we can help them cope. Otherwise you're looking at possibility of medication also being involved to help them in the healing process.
I was researching before our discussion, and one of the I just came across this site where it said, we've got a roster of uh, psychology counselors, but it didn't specify what kind, or maybe I didn't look deep enough. And they all seem to be, or most of them seem to be talking in also about uh, LGBTQ plus um, issues, um, sexual identity, and sexual, um, you know, things around that,
Mm-hmm.
because that has become a very dynamic or very confusing situation. It's no longer even 30 years ago, 25 years ago, where you said man, woman, that's it. Now it's far more than that. Is
Yes.
that very much on the rise?
uh, I There is, and I think there is more recognition about it. So a lot, I think the corporate world is beginning to include a lot more sensitivity and inclusivity there. What we find is not just with the LGBTQIA plus section, but also with other minority groups. They have been harder hit in these difficult times, and they are more vulnerable to develop mental health concerns as well, because they have further additional factors that make them feel misunderstood, face judgment, right, from society. So yes, that has been on the rise, I think, for two reasons. The awareness has opened up, so people are more willing to talk about it. And within the corporate culture, although there is a broad openness saying, you know what, we welcome it and we allow for mental health professionals who we have on our team who are going to help, address these concerns, for you to come and discuss it. That is there. um, However, there is still a hesitation of going and talking about this at the workspace. So
Hmm.
sometimes people come in saying, I want to seek help. I get it from my office and they do offer us services, but I do not wish to take it there because they're a little uncertain how much the confidentiality is going to stick around, and they are still apprehensive and worried that it's going to come back and bite them at work.
Yeah.
Now, that's not in the least to say that that is what the professional out there is going to do, but that's just a reflection of still how unsafe they feel. That although this awareness is there and this, it's all on the rise, but they're still feeling excluded and they're still feeling discriminated against within these places.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to come up with a point, which is
Mhm.
perhaps you may find that a little devil's advocate. Uh, let's say another point of view.
Most
Uh,
welcome.
all humans have frailties. Everyone has dilemmas. Many manage these, and it teaches us, perhaps it teaches us life lessons. An older person today might say, we had this problem in our life too, 20, 30, 35 years ago, but we learned to deal with them and we came out stronger. and that's the human condition. So why does my child or why do I need therapy? Because this is life. Life is unfair sometimes. Life is difficult dilemmas. Life has is pushing you constantly, and you become a little more resilient
Mhm.
in trying to find solutions of various kinds within, without you, and all that. So why should I go in for therapy? What would you say to that?
I absolutely agree with that perspective. I don't think there is anything wrong in that as an approach. However, of course, there was going to be a however. Uh, why does someone need therapy? There are times where we go through difficult situations. I'm not saying that every person needs a therapist. Let's please first clarify that. But when I begin to realize that in my effort to go through this situation, I am struggling, it's causing me more harm, it's causing me more distress, and I am not being able to get out of it despite multiple efforts, despite seeking support from my family. Okay. At that point, seeking help from a professional who is guided and trained to help equip me to overcome these circumstances, I see is of no harm. It's another way, if I had to put it, is if you had to take an analogy, and I'm trying to think of one where, let's say, for example, you know what, I've scratched my arm and I can begin to see that there's an infection. A long time ago, one would say, what's the need to go to a doctor? Just let it stay and it will heal itself. But that wound could get septic and it could run the risk of taking away your life. So the question is that, yes, sure, in the beginning, you can let it heal. That's probably going to help build your immunity, it's going to make you stronger. But if you begin to realize that it's doing more harm to wait and tough it out than to seek help, then it seems like quite an easy choice.
No, I wanted to take that a little further. Do you find that a person, a young or even an older person,
Mhm.
uh, saying, sharing with somebody close that, I've been going to see a therapist and it's beginning to help me cross over and deal with some of the issues that I've been facing? And do you find that there are chances that that person may be ridiculed or questioned at least?
Question, yes. Ridiculed, lesser so nowadays. And that's what I feel the difference of the destigmatization that has been happening, the increased awareness that has been happening, has been contributing towards. If I were to put it, I feel like in a lot of ways, sometimes we're all questioning what the education system today is training us for because of the nature in which um, the situation is changing and shifting so drastically that we feel like maybe it's not preparing us in the most optimized ways, which is why a lot of the education systems are going through changes to help us land a job. So in that way, in fact, a lot of people have been telling me, after therapy, as feedback, saying, what, if we were taught these things sometimes in school, it would help us manage ourselves so much better, it would help us manage our relationships so much better and understand our emotions so much better, and perhaps we could be even more optimized, we could feel, we could reach even newer heights for ourselves. So I feel like it is a concept that is being introduced nowadays in schools. Like Delhi has implemented a happiness project, which it's a part of the curriculum to actually include mental health awareness and helping them cope better. And I think if that can be something that can be provided as a training early on, maybe today we don't have the answer, but I would be quite optimistic to say and certain that 10 years, 20 years later, if we compare how resilient those individuals are compared to those who didn't go through the training, we would see significant differences.
But Myra,
Mm.
there is happiness is a great goal too, is an optimization goal, but
Right.
there is sadness in life too.
Absolutely. It's called the happiness project, but it's not about just being happy. It's about managing ourselves and understanding our mental health and managing the downs better.
I'm just
Well,
giving
yeah.
you a perspective that I possibly may have felt all these years as
Mm-hmm.
a this, though I can tell you from a personal point of view that my I have friends whose children are taking, and my friends are very comfortable sharing this with us, knowing that we will not run this effort down. But I'm just saying that uh, you dealt with of course things have changed. There was no covid, there was no cell phone, there was no social media, there was
Mm-hmm.
no going away to work somewhere else. Life was a little more structured and perhaps a little less complicated. It had its complications, but not these artificial complications. So you fell down, you had a scratch, you coped,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a little bit of sadness. Somebody you were infatuated with left the city, or and looks like the world has come to an end, and you cope with it. So again, I bring up that same point:
Mm-hmm.
is is happiness a constant goal?
I do not think happiness is the constant goal. I think that would be a very unrealistic goal if we were to make it one. Because we are, through evolution, wired in a way for experiencing all the human emotions, and each one serves its purpose. Whether it's sadness, it's jealousy, it's disgust, it's fear, they all help us live better and live more fully. The goal for us, when we, and does everyone need it? No, I don't think so. Does every person need therapy? And is that what I'm advocating? No, I'm saying we were at one end of stigma and complete ignorance and complete denial of these being concerns, of them even being real. Like, if I had to put it as an example, if I got a fracture in my leg and I went to the orthopedic doctor, no one's going to say, but are you really sure you broke your leg, or is it just in your head? But when someone walks in, even today, a fair share, saying, doctor, I am not feeling good and I feel like crying and I want to end my life, the family, that's after a lot of resistance from the family saying, just think your way out of it. Come on, you just feel better and you'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So
true.
the goal is towards recognizing that when there is an issue, my goal is not to say that we have to create an issue when none exists, but when there is an issue, let us acknowledge it. And if there is help available for it that can help you manage the issue better, why not take it? If sometimes they say, right, if you get a cold and you don't, you take medicine or you don't take medicine, it's going to go away in 7 days. Why do we take the medicine in the hope that it's going to help relieve some of the symptoms? And
my
it's
my I must put my own despite how and what I'm questioning, I must put my own views on record here, so that you don't walk away thinking that I'm stuck in a time warp. Is that I think it's a very good idea, because it again, I keep on getting the same message over and over again, that if something can give you help and make you feel not just good about yourself, but good enough to say, okay, that's happening. This is how I cope with it. But life goes on, and I must do my other things normally, and not let this part affect that part. So
Mhm.
I do get what you're saying. So lest you have some uh, misunderstanding of any kind, it's my job to ask
Yes,
questions all around.
we have to think of it from different perspectives. But uh, what for me is the strongest indicator, okay, objectively, of what we are discussing and where the trend seems to be moving towards are in the numbers. Okay, and what's out there? If we look at it in India alone, we are looking at, including online and offline, there was an IMARC group report which came out in 2024, and they are predicting the growth of mental health services being utilized in India to be at a growth rate of about 28 to 30% each year on year. And I am reasonably sure no one's going to be spending all that money if there wasn't a need for it, right? And if there wasn't distress. If you look at AI and the use of AI as per the report, and in fact, it's funny because a client showed me this recently where they told me that there was the top use of AI in 2020, the second highest use of AI in 2024 was for therapy, and that has moved to position one in 2025. People are using AI to seek help and to get that empathetic cure, which means people are feeling unheard and misunderstood and are wanting to do something about it.
Which brings me to my next question. What is the if the need is growing at such a amazing such a rapid rate, what is the availability of professionals online, offline, otherwise, because there's always a chance that somebody takes um, uh, help from somebody offline, online, across continents. I know
Right.
of that too, and I'm sure you do too. What are the numbers we are talking about, and what are the numbers you think should actually you know increase to of the professionals?
So, of the professionals, the WHO recommends that you should have three psychiatrists per lakh individuals in the population. And their prediction is that is a good proportion to sufficiently, at least, to be able to address the needs of that population. The reality, and I'm saying this for psychiatrists alone, is there is in India 0.75 psychiatrist per lakh people. So
This is
that's
psychiatrists.
psychiatrists, yes, absolutely. That's four times lesser
Yeah,
than what WHO recommends.
exactly.
That's the reality of India, okay? We have to acknowledge India has the highest number of suicides as well. Of course, that's a big part because of our population numbers as well. Uh, but there is a lack. And the same follows for psychologists, for counselors as well. So there is a huge lack. You mentioned jokingly about me being busy, but I see this as the trend across all my peers. We are reaching a situation where sometimes we are having to refuse people because it's not there, and that's where I feel like tools like even AI step in for even temporarily filling in some of that gap or to give some amount of help or some amount of guidance wherever possible. So there are tele helplines. Even the government of India reported that they had this telemanas helpline that they had activated, I think in 2022, in response to the whole mental health crisis that had followed after COVID and the lockdowns and the reintegration, and they have found an overwhelming response there. So people, I think it's that turning point, and hopefully this is going to also get a lot more young people interested in the profession, and we should be able to bridge this gap.
In time, because this is a quite a low number.
In time. It has been a struggle, and I think it is continuing to, but we are in that trend where we are hopefully moving towards filling the needs and the requirements over the next
Uh,
couple of years, I think.
suppose somebody is out there and is um, confused. What who should I go to? How should I talk? Should I open up completely? What advice would you give to somebody who is, you don't know that person is out there? What advice would you give? What is the stage where they should feel comfortable and proceed with trying to find somebody to talk to?
Um, the first place I usually suggest to find someone to talk to is in your immediate friends and family. If there is someone you can trust, if there is someone you can voice your concerns to, I would feel that's a good starting spot. That's a good starting place to begin. Have a discussion with them, share with them what your concerns are. Sometimes, in just talking about your issues, allows more clarity and thought. You may find resolution. The moment you feel it's beginning to impact multiple aspects of your life, it's beginning to emotionally put you in a roller coaster. If you feel like work is getting affected, my relationships are getting affected, multiple avenues are getting affected, it's time that it may be helpful to seek help from a professional. You could either reach out to a counselor. So if you're in school or at work, you could reach out to someone where it's easiest access. You could reach out to someone online. You could reach out to a psychiatrist. And usually, trust that we are all have enough expertise to guide you to the appropriate professional. And sometimes, you know, uh, usually for me in the beginning, the conversation when I'm talking to someone before seeing them for the first time is often, let's discuss and then even see whether you need me at all or not. There is no assumption that definitely it's a requirement. If we feel like there isn't a need, then it is our responsibility to also guide you and say, listen, I think things are broadly okay, just sometimes tide it over. Someone who comes in, like you were mentioning, after a heartbreak, you try to go past it because it's understandable for the loss. But if it's been beyond 3 months, 6 months, and it's impairing all other parts of your life, maybe some help would do you good.
So, finally, have there been, you've been practicing this for a while. You
Mm.
mentioned COVID. So, COVID must have been the kind of a thing that set off more awareness. But have you had clients who you think, younger ones, who you think have you've help them cope with the situation better? Have you had feedback? Have you seen that person move to a more optimal self-realization and coping mechanisms? And I mean, basically, of course, difficult to ask a doctor, did you help so and so, or a clinical psychologist. But do you think, have people given you this feedback to say it really, really made a difference?
Uh, Hopefully, yes. I would like to think so.
No, I do
Right?
understand,
No,
but
I'll tell you.
in concrete,
I'll elaborate on that. So it sort of helps. Of course, it's our wish, and we hope we can help every person we see. The reality is, you can't. Okay. In therapy, and since we're talking about this, rapport is super essential. So, in fact, if we're struggling to form rapport with someone, I often suggest that they see somebody else for it to be more effective as a process. So before I talk about the fact that it has been effective, yes, it's important to acknowledge that there are times it's not. I would love to be the person to help them bring that change in their life. Sometimes you're not that person, but more often than not, I have seen people, and my goal is usually to help them get rid of me at the earliest. That's when my work is, the best done. Is I feel happy, I feel grateful that I've been able to see people through that journey. Some of them who are no longer seeing me regularly, but once in a way drop in a message about how they are doing, how well they are doing, or sometime later in life, maybe they'll reconnect years later, saying, you know what, I've had a bit of an up and down. I just want to perhaps connect once or twice and just get a reset and get my head clear, and that's what they will connect for. Broadly, at those points in time, we hear about how well they've been doing otherwise, and that's reassuring. I feel no news is good news in our profession, so sometimes we don't hear from them anymore after they have been doing well. The duration of therapy can vary from different people, sometimes from a few sessions to sometimes even a few years is required depending on where their situation is. But fortunately, we have been. And to add to that, I would like to say that not just in person, what COVID has really changed as a perspective for me is this is very effective online too.
Hmm.
I have begun this process, started therapy, and we have terminated therapy without ever physically meeting, with great feedback from clients as well. And this is my personal experience, which pre-COVID, if you asked me saying see someone online, I'd be like, no, it's not the same as flesh and blood, it has to be in person. But I was pleasantly surprised and wronged in the fact that it was effective, and it continues to say so. And not just me, all the research indicates that getting therapy online from someone remote where access may be difficult, um, is effective. In fact, I find staying in the same city, so many young professionals today uh, prefer to do online sessions because they don't want to spend the half an hour, the 45 minutes traveling, or they
Yeah.
prefer the anonymity and the comfort of their room to be able to have such a candid discussion.
There has to be some, despite all this,
Hmm.
or distant distance consulting. Despite all this, there. I mean, one of the other factors, of, in flesh, in real life or otherwise, has to be cultural context, isn't it? Sometimes you may come across somebody whose cultural context is a bit different. Sure, there are things which are common to all Indians, but suppose there is a person from elsewhere, in your outside your in the country, but
Absolutely.
outside your immediate cultural understanding. Uh, do you then do you or does that is that a problem?
Uh, if there's not enough information about it, it can be a potential issue. So sometimes it's a cultural context, sometimes there's an age barrier. So you'll find people saying, no, I prefer to talk to someone much much older, or someone much much younger, because there's a generational difference. So wherever uh,
There
the
could be a gender factor also.
that factor is also there. So there are people who will say, I don't care which gender I'm talking to as long as you understand me. And for some people, they'll begin off saying, no, no, I would prefer to talk to someone of the same gender. And then that's what helps them establish more comfort and rapport. And then it's what works for you, right? While we're talking about within the same country, sometimes we may not understand cultural context. Interestingly, a lot of times, because you spoke about people seeing you from overseas, that also happens a fair share, because then they will talk about trying therapy over there. And then because of the cultural mismatch of the from where the therapist is and the someone with a more Indian, more family oriented
Yeah.
background, sometimes they're like, listen, they're just telling me don't talk to your parents and that's okay, and I can't do that. So they find a bit of a mismatch, and then they seek someone in India because they feel like it's more relatable, you can connect. Which brings
Mm.
me back to rapport being important and the understanding of their situation being important.
Yeah, and empathy, of course, which is crucial. I fear, uh, just generally, but I fear that a poorly equipped counselor can cause harm too. And I hope. I mean, obviously nobody would want that, but to seek out the best possible person is also a challenge.
Yes, it is. It is. Therapy can do harm, and that is true. In fact, some of the initial studies showed that it could do harm, and so they said if it can do harm, perhaps it can do some good too. And that's where it got explored, right, as a stream as well. So yes, it it does have the potential to hurt, it has the potential to harm. In fact, there was a recent paper said that it changes, discussing your past life events, or things from your younger, from your childhood days, can actually, the way you narrate them in therapy and the way the discussion flows, can actually alter the memory itself. So
Okay.
someone with a who may walk in with thinking about their childhood in a, or a certain incident in their childhood in a relatively neutral way, may in the session reprocess it as something far more negative. And the way we think about what has happened changes our memory of that situation and the impact it has on us too. So these are things that one is to be aware of, to be warned of, which is why the training, which is why the experience of the therapist is good. But I think that's true for any professional that we seek for any service, right?
That's true. That's true. No, but I'm really glad we did this, Myra, because some years, 3 or 4 years ago, Dr. Parekh, your colleague from your hospital, had
Okay.
told me that COVID is going to create a lot more mental health issues, and I was keen to see whether how it had flown, and this gives me tremendous amount of perspective on what has happened in these last 3 or 4 years, plus where it's heading, plus the great positive aspect of what has come through to me is the destigmatization, and that itself, I think, is a victory in the Indian social and cultural milieu. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so thank you very much, Myra Desai, for helping this layperson see through this entire process. And I hope listeners who tune in, and this remains on the websites, various websites for a long time. I hope some people at least listen to it and say, hey, wait a minute, it's not as bad out there, and I can reach out to somebody or the other. So thank you, Myra Desai, for helping us understand the nuances of this very complex and very complicated issue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatia, for having me. And it's thanks to the efforts of journalists like you who are spreading the word and reaching it out there. So it's a joint effort on multiple grounds. So yes, thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful. That was Myra Desai, clinical psychologist from Jaslok Hospital in Mumbai, who was talking to me about how more and more Indians are seeking out mental health, wellness, and why this is a good thing. We'll be back next time with another guest on the Wire Talks. Till then, from me, Siddharth Bhatia, and the rest of the team, goodbye.